Welcome back to the Matriarchs. Today we're talking about mental health, what it is, why it matters, and why it's okay to not have it all together. No lectures, no labels, just real talk about anxiety, stress, big feelings, and what to do when it all feels like too much. Let's just be honest. Life can feel really heavy sometimes. You smile when you're supposed to, say I'm fine when you're not, and wonder if anyone actually sees what you're going through. We see you, and we're so glad you're here. If your mind has been racing, your heart's been heavy, or you've just felt off lately, this is your space. Let's breathe, let's chat, and most of all, let's remind you that you're not alone.
So today we're welcoming a special guest who brings both heart and deep expertise to the conversation. Erika Foulk, a licensed professional counselor with over 14 years of experience helping kids, teens, and adults work through trauma and attachment challenges. Erika specializes in emotionally focused therapy and EMDR, powerful tools she uses to help people heal from the inside out. She's also shared her knowledge as a professor at Park University and Barton College, helping shape the next generation of therapists. But beyond the credentials, Erika is a devoted mom of 2 girls, a passionate advocate for mind, body wellness, and a woman with a big vision. She's currently planning retreats and workshops to bring even more healing into her community. We are so lucky to have Erika here with us today. Erika, welcome to the Matriarchs. We're so excited to dive into this conversation with you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah. I love that you guys are doing this. So thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We know you're going to bring so much to the conversation. So.
Yes. Erika, can you tell us, just jumping right in here, what mental health is and how we can break the stigma and normalize the conversation around mental health?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we talk about mental health, we're really talking about emotional well-being, social well-being, your, psychological well-being. So there's a lot of components that go into mental health. But basically for your average person, it's just how you're feeling day to day. And sometimes everybody's going to have a bad day here or there, or something that doesn't go right for them. But if you're noticing that consistently things don't feel right, that's when I feel like it's time to check in with that mental health. We all have a range of like our healthiest mental health and our least healthy mental health. It's like a spectrum. So It's not just like, oh, you're mentally ill or you're mentally well. It's just on this free floating spectrum. So I really want to destigmatize that. I love that you brought that up. I think this younger generation, it's so encouraging to see they feel really empowered to seek out mental health help. I see a lot of TikToks and a lot of social media that do have positive advice, help from therapists and also from kids just saying like, it's okay if you have anxiety, so do I. So I love that it's being brought more into the conversation. In the past, and I feel like the older generations, when you move up the scale, like the boomer generation, there's a lot of folks that do feel like, oh, therapy's only for if you're totally mentally ill. And it's like a last hope. I think in the past, it was considered something only for if you were very sick. And they still seem confused if someone's just like, I'm doing okay. I've just been under a lot of pressure lately, and I think therapy would help me. But I love that we're starting to turn that around, that people are willing and able to ask for help and to really normalize growth work and the fact that we're all needing support at different times in our lives and we all are working on ourselves and evolving. There's nothing wrong with seeking help with that process.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Erika. I know, growing up, it wasn't talked about in our household, really. I mean, maybe a little bit, but it definitely, I had a lot of friends that, it was very much like their family never spoke of counseling or therapy, never, like it was almost like taboo to some degree.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And I think too, even when you're like in a healthy frame of mind, I also think it's just good to have that ongoing conversation. Like there are little things that creep up on us And I feel like sometimes too, just having that like maintenance work of, having a professional to talk to like yourself, just to bounce things off of, to keep us from getting to that point, where we feel like we're in a really low. And we all experience, I've experienced it, anxiety, moments of just depression or feeling like completely overwhelmed. And so, yeah, I'm super excited that it's, it is becoming more normal and that people feel more open to talk about. I talk about it openly with my girls. Like, I'm in therapy, my therapist is amazing. And, she helps me so much, just to let them know that, like, if you ever get to that point in your life where you want or need to talk to someone, it's totally okay,
Yeah, I love that, Trish. That's one of the things I was going to say about destigmatizing is talking about it. And if you do go to therapy, it's okay to tell people, hey, yeah, my therapist said this cool thing the other day, or, even normalizing just help in general. Like, I heard this really wonderful podcast that was talking about panic attacks or de-stressing, just bringing that into the conversation. Like, it's okay to need help. It's okay to get tune-ups. Really, it's ideal to not wait until you're in a crisis to seek help. Just like with, physical health or anything else, you don't want to wait until it's an emergency. We can all use just a little boost or a tune-up sometimes. I'm just of the belief, like, pretty much everybody could benefit from therapy. And as therapists, they tell us in grad school, every therapist needs a good therapist. We call those the granddaddy therapists, or
I love that.
the therapist of all the therapists.
I love that so much. Allie, she has a friend at school, and I had the privilege of coaching her in basketball. And she's like been seeing a therapist for 2 years, and she's very open about it. And I really praised her for that. I said, it's so nice that you talk so openly about it and you are normalizing it, because your friends may not feel the same way, but you talking about it and making it feel so normal is opening doors for your friends to say, oh, maybe I should go talk to somebody, So I love how open she is about it. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. We all struggle at times. And yeah, I just think it's such a healthy approach. I know it's helped me so much.
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, I love seeing teens getting help and getting therapy and support, because without that scaffolding, they kind of sometimes lean on each other in ways that can be overwhelming. So I'll have teens come to me in therapy and say, I don't know how to help my friend. She's has anorexia, or she's cutting herself and she didn't tell anyone but me, and I don't know how to help her. I'm like, babe, you're not a therapist. Like, that is such a heavy weight to carry. And I'm not saying don't seek support from friendships, but really, it shouldn't be up to a 15 or 16-year-old girl to figure out how to problem solve that her friend is suicidal.
That's such a good. Yeah.
So, if there are girls out there that have friends that come to them with these really complex and heavy problems, and you feel weighed down by the burden of that, I encourage you to also seek support. Tell an adult that you trust, a school counselor, a parent, because your friend probably needs some kind of professional help bigger than what you can offer. And it's not on you to try to carry that alone, or to try to know all the ways to help fix this problem.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I'm sure that does happen quite a bit, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it can feel like a betrayal of trust. Like, oh, well, she only told me. I don't know if it's okay to tell someone else. But that's why I say go to a trusted adult. If your parents are safe people to talk to about emotional issues, you can do that. You can talk to a school counselor. But just trying to handle that all by yourself is too much.
Yeah, you're right. Meg and I often talk about, the pressures that teenagers today are faced with. And I don't know, I guess, what have you seen in your practice with teens and young women and the pressures that they're under? And how can teens manage, school-related stress and academic pressures? Like, how would you encourage them to to handle that, I guess?
Yeah, great question. I feel like I see a lot of perfectionism, and that can come out in a lot of different ways, like really high level pressure for academic perfection that can come across as like with body image or eating disorders, putting so much pressure on themselves to look a certain way. Also, even Trish and I were joking around beforehand, but like this is the era with teen girls of like all the YouTube and TikTok tutorials about like how to contour perfectly and how to have like a million step skincare routine and to get that glassy skin. And it almost feels like that's additional pressure as well. Like, oh, you have all the tools. Like, why aren't you exfoliating in 3 different ways every time you shower? You know, it's just like, oh my God.
And not to mention how expensive it is, you know?
No, yeah. But I mean, and all of that's documented and put online for girls, which causes extra pressure. People are comparing themselves to highly edited, filtered images online. I love that there's been just in recent years, I'm seeing this like kind of swing over of like the de-influencing movement of people that are like, yeah, my house is beautiful. Look at my junk room. Or, you know, like, here's what I looked like when I woke up this morning, and just trying to like shed some light on things that most people see online are polished and edited and what they want you to see. And that's not everyday reality. Even for someone that's gorgeous and has a beautiful home, they still have messes. They still have rough patches and days where they don't look like that, times they don't look like that. But I think when everybody's trying to like look picture perfect, like they're in a magazine spread every minute of every day, that's so hard on teen girls. I'm so glad that I skipped out on all of that in the 90s. Just there's
yours were just embraced, right?
I mean, fully. There was so much bad makeup and bad hair choices, and no one will ever see.
Right, exactly. So funny.
Erika, I have a question for you. So I have a 9-year-old who's been dealing with some anxiety already, and she reached out to her counselor, but you know, we all hide it. We try to mask all of those signs. Do you have any suggestions or things to look for as a parent, you know, to know when to seek help for your child when they're kind of showing some anxiety or depression or low self-esteem issues, things like that?
I think that's a great question. As a parent, you're going to know your child's patterns better than anybody else. So I would say trusting your gut on that when you see a change happening. And usually those changes are kind of slow, but they add up. With kids, anxiety manifests a lot of times as like a tummy ache. They'll complain that their stomach hurts a lot when they have anxiety. With teens, sometimes also that you'll see like nail biting or picking the skin around their fingers to where like they have all their little skin hanging, or, you know, bloody pieces around their fingernails. Sleep disruption, whether they're suddenly like afraid to go to bed at night or they're waking up in the night more clingy to you than how they were before. Or if you hear them kind of the self-talk where they're like, oh, I'm so stupid. I messed that up. You know, those kind of things. It's like they're this bundle of anxiety that they have to get it right, or it means something bad about them. So those are some kind of things I look for with anxiety with kids. There's some really great books on like for kids. So I have a daughter who's almost 9 as well. I read to her at night sometimes, or I found a couple of these workbooks or journals that we can like do together because she thinks that that kind of stuff's kind of cool. But really, the best thing you can do is be an approachable and validating person to that child.
Yeah, I love that. Okay.
Yeah, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I even just some of the things you said, I've recognized in both my girls at different times throughout, their childhood, especially, my youngest, she just naturally has a little bit of high anxiety, and so it's interesting. And you don't always think of those as like signs of anxiety or depression, like you think they just are normal parts of, not that they're not normal, but that's just a part of who they are. But when in reality, that's very much could be a sign of anxiety or them struggling with something. So that's helpful.
And I think you hit the nail. I mean, obviously, but hit the nail on the head with the perfectionism. Like she struggles, and I know so many of us do with perfectionism and trying to do everything just right. And I don't know where she got that from, Trish, but
from our Aunt Trish.
It's genetic.
Yeah. It's funny.
But yes, we all try to be so perfect, especially with social media. Like you said, we have to compare to ourselves to everything we see on there, and then we just spiral, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think an intervention that we can really easily do as moms is just like being really open and honest to not burdening our kids or teens with our own struggles, but to just be real with them. Like, I also struggle with anxiety sometimes. Here's what I do when I'm struggling with that, or making repairs with them. Like if we get overwhelmed and get kind of short with our kids, to go to them and say, hey, that's not how I wanted to be with you. I think I felt really overwhelmed in that moment. I'm working on that. Next time I want to just take a breath. Like we're modeling for them healthy behaviors.
Yeah.
And they see like, you're not perfect, you're flawed, but anytime that you did make a mistake like that, we just repair it and move on.
Yeah.
I love that.
I do too. Yeah. It's, I know I've had to have several of those moments, with my girls where, just acknowledging it, apologizing, letting them know, like you said, no one's perfect. We're all going to have our moments. So are you. And that's okay. We're there for each other. So.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to bounce back because you had asked me about like, what can girls do to help combat some of those pressures or the perfectionism. And I feel like I didn't really touch on that. I want to give them at least a few ideas. It's probably not anything groundbreaking or that they haven't thought of or tried, but some good behaviors for that is like making a list of things that you do when you're feeling really healthy. So I have like a short list of like behaviors, activities, things I know that I'm doing consistently when I feel great. And that might be like doing yoga or going to bed on time or taking walks outside to get that sunshine, decompressing, not being on my screens too much, whatever it is that rounds that out for you. But when we feel our worst, usually if we pull out that list, we're like, I'm only doing like one of these things right now.
Yeah.
So for teen girls, that might be like journaling, spending quality time with friends, doing a hobby or an interest, making art, making music, spending time outside off of screens. So just, as a basic idea, ushering in that self-care when you feel like life is getting a little too overwhelming.
I love
as
that.
just kind of a step one anyway.
No, it's so important. I've noticed like when Allie feels overwhelmed, she'll be like, Mom, will you run me a bath? And then we like turn the lights down and we light a few candles, and just little things like that are, can be super helpful. Just like you said, to decompress. So.
I love that. And I use this as an example because it was hilarious to me, but I know that he wouldn't mind. I had a client years ago who was in his early 20s and was struggling with some depression, anxiety. And when I asked him, like, well, what's your routine look like? Kind of what's your sleep routine? What's your eating routine? He was like, well, I stay up really, really late, sometimes gaming, and then I'll sleep in the morning too late. And then some days I'm just like not hungry because I was up all night. I don't eat, but then I'll be like starving and I'll eat like 6 hot dogs. I drink like a 2 liter of Mountain Dew every day. I was like, babes, that is like absolutely a recipe to make anyone feel terrible.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if you took the healthiest person alive and plugged them into that routine for a week, they would feel horrible.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and that's not like to shame that person or anything. We had a good laugh about it and kind of got some steps to get back on track. But it's true that if you take even the healthiest person and put them in bad sleep habits, bad eating habits, high stress, too much caffeine, they're not going to feel well.
Yeah.
So sometimes we just have to go back to the basics of like getting good rest, eating in a somewhat balanced way, like making sure that you're getting enough food, that you're not over caffeinating. Humans take a lot of basic care.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Such a good point. Yeah. I see it in myself too, just if I get out of routine or if I'm not eating great or not getting enough sleep. I mean, it definitely affects you. So it's interesting you say that though. If you put a healthy person in that, situation or in those habits, you're right. You would feel terrible. So
yeah,
that makes perfect sense. Well, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask Erika, what would you or Megan, what would you want your younger teenage self to know? Like, if you could give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think one of the most important things that I would want myself to know would be like to fully be yourself, be authentically you. Trying to mold yourself to be like someone else that you think is cooler or prettier or more interesting is always going to be a fail. I mean, you're going to be at best like a second runner up to this other version that's not really you. People have such individual gifts, whether that's music or art or your energy is calm and it's easy for you to draw people into you, or you're a problem solver, whatever that is, like fully embrace that.
Yeah.
Those gifts were given to you for a reason, and trying to repackage that and make it into something like to be cool or to fit in or be one of the preppy girls or whatever. It's just going to leave you feeling empty inside, and the world is missing out on that authentic version of you at the same time.
That's so good.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. I think it's something a lot of, people, a lot of teenagers struggle with. I know I struggled with that as a teenager. So that's so good.
Yeah. I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Please, Meg, I want to hear what you have to say.
I was just going to say, I think we all need to remind ourselves that we're always going to have, our highs and our lows. And I just wish I could go back and tell myself, like, each day is a new day, and you just to keep trying, keep going and don't give up and just be you, each day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's so good too. I love it.
What about you, Trish?
Oh, I would definitely say, you don't have to be a perfectionist. I 100% was a perfectionist as a teenager. I mean, Meg could tell you, my room was always like, everything had to be in place. Everything had to be perfect. I thought I had to be perfect. Unfortunately, Megan and I grew up in a wonderful church, but I think sometimes that environment can make you feel like that you have to be perfect to some degree, when in reality, like, that's not even, it's not even, I mean, I won't get too deep into faith, but that's not even in the Bible, perfectionism, but I think that that's just something that is kind of cast on you a little bit. And so 100% mine would be, you don't have to be perfect. No one's perfect. And trying to be is not only exhausting, it's unachievable. So
yeah,
that's what I would tell my younger self. But
Yeah, that's great. Just like let your hair down. It's okay to be a little weird. It's okay to be a little messy once in a while. Just embrace who you are and trust yourself. I really, going forward, even in my work with adult women, it's so important to me to help people reconnect with their intuition, with listening to their bodies, with understanding when something feels off to them and trusting that. And I feel like we are taught throughout our lives, especially as girls and women, to kind of shut that off and trust what everybody else is saying. But that is your biggest indicator in life. Like, does this relationship feel off? Does something about this person not feel right to me? And just being able to really, really have that confidence in yourself and your ability to guide yourself through your life.
Yeah. That's such good advice. I love that.
Yeah, that's really good. How do you know when it's your anxiety, though?
Good question. I'm so glad that you asked that. I was just having that conversation with my sisters recently because it does feel tricky when you have big emotions, right? To be like, whoa, sometimes my emotions are flipping out over here. Like, how do I trust that? I think that sometimes when we've had experiences with really big emotions, including really big anxiety, that adds to our distrust because we feel like, ooh, I'm a loose cannon sometimes. I don't know if I can trust when I'm feeling really big feelings. But I think it's important to remember that emotions, even anxiety, at its core is our body telling us something.
Yeah.
There's a message in that for us. We're supposed to be gathering information from that. We just sometimes miss the message we were supposed to get and amplify the feeling of the anxiety. But if you're really paying attention, there's usually some truth in there to something is off about this, or that is too much, or maybe my anxiety is telling me I need more rest or I need more peace in my life. So I would just encourage you to go deeper on that and still continue to trust what your body's trying to tell you through that.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's so good.
I love it. For the therapy section, real quick. I love that.
Erika, you feel like there's some other major topic we need to cover real quick?
No, I would just make sure that we encourage girls that if you're feeling weighed down, if you feel like you need help, if things are overwhelming for you, to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be a therapist, but it can be. And there are some good resources for that. But even going to a parent, someone in your church that you trust, a school counselor, a friend's parent who's open and helpful. So that's my teenage daughter messaging me right now. Sorry for the dings. But
and you're going to share a national resource that we can give the girls too. I just wanted to make sure they knew that they can check out if they can't afford to speak to someone or if they don't have someone to speak to.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because it is important, like you said, and not everyone has access to or the resources to speak with someone at a professional level. So like you said, having somebody is important.
Yes.
And I know there are a lot of resources out there. I know as Megan said, you're going to share a resource on a national level, but I know in Kansas City, there are some, even like our church or my church, they offer counseling that's part of their ministry is they have therapists and counselors that they subsidize, to keep the cost down. So there are options for sure. But so I'm glad you mentioned that. That's very important. So, all right, girls. If no one's told you lately, you're doing better than you think. Your feelings are valid. Your stories matter, and help is always, always within reach. Whether you're having a good day or barely hanging on, just remember this. You don't have to figure it all out today. You just have to keep going, and we'll be right there cheering you on. Thanks for hanging out with us today on the Matriarchs. Until next time, take care of your heart, your mind, and your beautiful one-of-a-kind self.